Hi, Sue.
Hi, Amelia. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Let's talk about oxytocin, who you are an international expert on this wonderful hormone, one of the three hormones of happiness, dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. Could we talk about what is oxytocin and then go from there about different aspects of it? So,
It's my pleasure. Thank you for asking. Um, Let me back one step further back from where you started and say that if we didn't have a set of molecules, some are called hormones, in our body, if we didn't have those, we would not have survived, because we cannot live with only the hormones of fear or the hormones of threat. And the we, of course, is not just humans, but actually most animals, most and all mammals. So
that's fascinating. So first, until we got to the appearance of these hormones, we had mainly the hormones of fear and
or escape, avoidance. If you've
mhm,
ever seen a lizard,
mhm,
watched a little chameleon, you see that they don't let you come near them. They're ready to leave immediately.
mhm,
They only interact with others of their own species when they're mating.
mhm,
They lay their eggs, and the eggs have to take care of themselves. And
mm.
that's true of many kinds of animals. They're successful in reproducing, but they invest very, very little in the offspring. Mammals always invest something, even if it's only milk. So, what happens in the mammalian body is over, let's say, 300 million years or so, 200 million perhaps is a better estimate. Those creatures we call mammals that went from egg laying to actually allowing the baby to stay inside the mother. So that was an investment in that infant, and then feeding that baby from her own body, which was until modern times the only way that mammalian babies could survive. Those mammals had not only a physiology for making milk, they had a physiology that allowed them to be with others, to be maternal, to care for their young, to do these uniquely social things that most healthy people value in humans. We value this behavior. We value maternal behavior. We value positive sociality. And it not only do we have a positive impression of it, but we know that it allowed us to survive, to exist
I
as a.
mean, it's fascinating what you're saying because it just connects so much biology with also spirit and humanness and consciousness. So we are
Right.
talking that these changes of carrying the baby inside and then giving birth and holding it and nurturing not only allow the development of the brain also because of all the biology associated with it, but the biology of connection and of caring, of
Right.
giving of yourself and of staying with somebody else until it grows and so much. So that's beautiful. I never have thought in those ways about the molecules and about
Well,
the especially oxytocin. And so tell us a little bit more about oxytocin. How is it I know it's
Well,
present in lactation,
yes,
allowing the milk to come down to feed the baby, but
it,
how else is oxytocin? I mean, initially how was oxytocin initially seen, and then how it has expanded on what it is?
well, you're asking me a whole lot of very good questions. The first one, how was it discovered? It was actually discovered over 100 years ago by people who recognized, and I'm not sure how they saw this, that the pituitary gland, if you take an animal's pituitary gland, and that's the gland that's under the brain in between the eyes, not the pineal, but the pituitary. And that organ contained something that if they ground up the pituitary, dried it, they could use it as a medicine to allow cows or sheep to deliver their babies more easily. So they were looking for agricultural applications. Now, that, of course, quickly spread to humans because at the time that we're talking about, around late 1800s, early 1900s, lots of women were dying in childbirth. But also, so they started making versions of this to use in humans, even before they knew what oxytocin was. They knew there was something in there in the pituitary gland that speeded up birth. At first, they thought it was just made in the pituitary. Turned out to be wrong. It was actually made in the brain.
In the hypothalamus, right?
Hypothalamus of the brain, yes. And there, that was the richest source that was known at that time.
And so then it was, how did it come to connect from the hypothalamus to the
hypothalamus to the pituitary gland? They're very close together. And there was a pathway, it's called a neurosecretory pathway. And that was discovered in 1928. That was a big surprise.
Amazing, because if you think the pituitary gland being the master gland that helps regulate all the other glands, endocrine glands, the internal glands, then we are talking here essential components of what is to be human and what is to have a regulated system that can communicate. And so it's fascinating. I mean, this is really powerful stuff.
Yes, and what you're saying is correct. The hypothalamus is part mostly of the body's capacity to deal with stress, to create homeostasis, water balance, food intake, stuff that's more primitive even than the kind of learning we humans think of. So you can survive, not well, but you can survive without a cortex. The cortex is on the top of the brain, so you know, if this is the brain stem, then there's a massive cortex on top. What happened was that in the course of evolution, we kept putting layers of complexity down, making our heads very big and making a place, if you will, for cognition and learning to occur. But it all depended on this brainstem. So they knew early on if people had some kind of stroke or accident that destroyed the cortex, they didn't necessarily die. In fact, they could live a long, long time. But if the stroke or the damage was in the brainstem, then death was inevitable. Respiration, heart rate, everything was being dysregulated. The heart still beats, but it's no longer regulated without the hypothalamus. So,
so we have the oxytocin being produced in the hypothalamus and then connected to the pituitary gland, the master gland that regulates all the other ones. And so what and then the first interest being on helping women to give birth and to lactate. And then what else was discovered about oxytocin that made it even much more? I mean, it's also present in men, right?
Right.
Okay. And
So the first thing that people said was, oh, maybe it's just made there and doesn't do anything. There were people arguing that through the 1980s. Okay. More intelligent people knew it couldn't be true, but the argument was that oxytocin was a female reproductive hormone with no known function in men. And I found textbooks back into as recently as the 1980s. Well, okay, not true. Not only is it not true, it misses the important, to my mind, functions of oxytocin, which were to allow us to be social and to co-regulate, to interact with others in ways that promoted survival and reproduction. So there's a role for oxytocin in male sexuality, probably a huge role. There's a role for oxytocin in male paternal behavior, taking care of babies, allowing them not to be overwhelmed by an infant. The mother gets double doses of oxytocin because she gets it during birth, and if she lactates, she gets some more. And even if she's not lactating, if she's producing a lot of estrogen, she gets even more. Males need oxytocin. It allows them to regulate stress in not just in the same way that females do, but with the added benefit of testosterone being eventually converted into a molecule that increases oxytocin.
And why would that be good for them?
Oxytocin has so many benefits. It allows the vagus to work more efficiently, and the vagus then regulates the entire body.
So the vagus being this long nerve that starts at the brainstem and goes all the way along the spine and influences all the heart and the lungs and the digestion and everything. So yeah.
The vagus is one of the most beneficial organs in the body. It's the 10th cranial nerve, but it's kind of a separate process. And it innervates everything, and it counteracts the overreactivity to acute stress that can kill us if we don't bring it back down. So if you're under some kind of life threat, you can deal with that quickly with sympathetic arousal and a whole lot of hormones that upregulate our ability to move quickly and have a lot of energy. But then we have to go into a restoration phase, whether we're male or female. So oxytocin is one piece, probably of particular importance, maybe the most important in my thinking, that allows us to restore after stress and not to use social cues to restore.
It's wonderful because it's amazing that this hormone that's so related to love and bonding and caring is such a powerful regulator of states of the state of the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, and of our health, our emotional and physical health. And I also read somewhere that it's anti-inflammatory, of course, because then when it lowers the stress, then it would lower the inflammation, and it opens the brain to cognition too.
Right, that's all correct. It's allowing us to go into contemplative states,
Mm-hmm.
probably things like meditation,
Mm-hmm.
spirituality. Those are very difficult to achieve if you don't have the capacity to shift your body state to a state of calmness, to a state where then you can be in another place and restore. You can be in the moment, not just in the past or the future, but in the moment.
Restoring wholeness. So then I imagine some of my friends, if I'm telling this in a nutshell, they are going to say, oh, well, if it's so good, what can I take so that I have it? But the thing is, do we work it from inside out or from outside in? And what are the dangers of taking it from outside in? Or
I have written a very long paper on that. But this is a lifetime conversation, Amelia. But read Nature's Medicine, that very long paper, go all the way to the end.
Okay.
The answer is there, why it's not a good medicine. It's a very good molecule. It's very adaptive, but it's part of an older system that includes arousal molecules. So you can't just always be in a safe place. Humans were never always safe, but they needed to be able to go back into a safe space, to go back to sociality, to go back to feeling safe. And that's where oxytocin comes in.
And for a more comprehensive way, let's say, just to round it up, instead of taking a drug, get a pet. And and in your relationship to a pet and hugging that, especially a dog, for example, that's always there giving love and
but they need care, and so not everyone's has the luxury of a pet. And so we need to go beyond drugs and beyond pets to understand the deep physiology of feeling safe, so we can then shift our own bodies by contemplative practices, by awareness, so that we don't walk into situations that are going to make things worse. So let's say you get a pet, but that pet's aggressive. All right, you have not accomplished the goal.
Right. And that's the problem of always trying to find a solution from outside. We are always back to, in whatever way we can, to working with ourselves and our inner state in the relation to the pet, in the relation to somebody else, and in the relation to ourselves. So breath and, like you were saying, meditation, contemplative moves, everything that helps us know ourselves better and work with ourselves. That's a longer and most sustainable way of approaching this than thinking of a solution from outside.
I would say it's part of the system. There's also a psychologist from 1970s, a famous fellow named John Bowlby. And Bowlby argued that we develop mental representations of safety early in life from our parents, from our way we were mothered, or later in life from relationships. And those relationships then sustain us, even if the person's not there. They become part of our nervous system. And
that's so wonderful. So we can connect with those, revisit those.
Of course.
Right.
So we have a balance, and especially in modern life, it's a difficult thing to get, a balance that allows us to move from independent safety and psychological stability to that which relies on others. It's actually easier to only manipulate one force like ourselves, but it's not as powerful as other can be. Positive experiences with others, like a dog, like a human that you trust. Those are extremely powerful. And that power gives them all kinds of positive hormonal changes, moves them out of depression in some cases. But it's expensive, right? We know having a relationship is emotionally expensive. What if your dog dies, you know? So this is not easy. It's obviously got huge benefits, or the body wouldn't put itself through such complex pathways to just survive. And many species don't have this attachment piece that we humans are so rewarded by, but also dependent on.
And how to work with all this. And that would be the subject of another conversation, but it's just absolutely beautiful. All this knowledge and all these discoveries. Thank you so much, Sue, for helping us to understand a little bit more of this marvel mystery that is our whole body, mind, and spirit, and our interrelations, and then how to come to balance, on the one hand, working with us, and also learning to work with others and co-relate and regulate. Yeah.
It's not easy.
It's not easy, but it's very worthwhile. And in any case, that's what life will bring, right? Always changes. So it's good to have a big toolkit, a big, learning different kinds of skills. And by being patient with oneself and being compassionate and saying, okay, yes, this might be a difficult moment, but let me see how I can work with this. We can always keep healing and moving forward. And we know several examples of people that have been able to do it. So it's possible. It's possible.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Bye
Thank
for
you.
today. We'll talk again later.